Welcome to today's webinar on the worker experience. I'm Haley Shenander of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. Before I turn it over to our speaker today, I have a few housekeeping items. Slides for this presentation and a copy of the video link will be emailed to all registered attendees next week. Eric will be entertaining questions at the end of his presentation. If you have a question, please type it in the chat box on Zoom. We'd love to get your feedback at the end of this presentation, so please take a moment to fill out the brief 3-question survey that pops up in your Zoom window when you exit the webinar. I'd also like to mention that the views expressed during this presentation are those of the presenters and not of the Minneapolis Fed or of the Federal Reserve System. Now, before Eric digs into the survey results, I'd like to give a little background on what the Worker Experience Initiative is. Like other regional reserve banks, the Minneapolis Fed has traditionally relied on input from mostly industry contacts to understand current economic trends. While that information is extremely useful, Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari recognized there were blind spots in our knowledge of the economy. As a result, the Minneapolis Fed launched the Worker Experience Initiative in 2021 to consistently seek insights from workers and job seekers across the states it represents. The goal has been simple: to include overlooked viewpoints and experiences to better inform monetary policy and increase our understanding of current conditions. So far, we have done this through new partnerships with organizations across the 9th District, including government, labor, and nonprofit organizations. Through these partnerships, we have received over 3,000 survey responses and have heard countless anecdotes from people about their experiences in the labor market and in the economy overall. Today's webinar focuses on one of our most recent surveys of individuals across the 9th District. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Haley. That was a great overview of the initiative. The highlights Haley just gave us summarize the work that started only a couple of years ago. Having said that, we have only started this work and are always looking to grow the number of partners and individual participants to our survey. You have a QR code on the left-hand corner of your screen. Whether you're with a business and organization, or simply you're an individual that is interested in helping inform the economy of the region, we want to hear from you. So please feel free to scan that QR code anytime. So I'll just get started with why is it important to hear from workers? Even though workers are disaggregated and it's actually very difficult to track those disaggregated behaviors, it is important to try to do so to get to a more complete picture of the economy. If we're only hearing from businesses, like Haley pointed out, that picture is incomplete. On the background of that need to better understand the labor market from the supply side of the equation is this chart right here. Many of you probably already know that labor force participation across the country has been declining for a few years now. That is, the number of people ages 16 to 64 who are working or looking for work has been decreasing. Like with everything else during the pandemic, it took a hit. Labor force participation declined in a major way. And as of the last data point, it is at 62.6%. 62.6%, and it remains well below pre-pandemic levels. Those patterns do hold across the 9th District. All states in the 9th District follow a very similar pattern in terms of labor force participation. So those efforts to understand the labor market a bit more brings us to what we're here for today. In the next few slides, I will be highlighting the key takeaways from our last survey. This survey was done in partnership with community action agencies in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and in partnership also with SEIU Local 26. Thanks so much to those partners for helping us distribute the survey that got us the information that you're about to hear about today. So up until the time of this analysis, we had received 488 responses, most over the summer months. Most of those responses came from rural areas in the district. And in this talk, I'm going to focus on the 17% of respondents who told us they were looking for some type of occupational change. That is, they were looking either for a new job, a promotion, a raise, or other similar changes. In terms of demographics, respondents mostly self-identified as white, but we heard also from some American Indian and Hispanic respondents. Over half of these respondents were of what is considered to be prime working age, between the ages of 25 and 54. Before I continue, sorry about that. Before I continue, I will encourage some caution. These survey results were not obtained from a random sample of the general population, but rather from a growing list of worker contacts that we have reached out over time who have shared their experiences with the Minneapolis Fed. So they should be interpreted as a systematic collection of anecdotes and qualitative insights about individuals' experiences rather than a quantitative estimate. So please keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the slides. Okay, a few takeaways to set the table. One important point is that employed individuals are also moving through the labor market, looking for changes. I think sometimes the focus tends to be heavily on the unemployed for very obvious and very valid reasons, but employed people are also moving around. So what changes are those individuals looking for? A variety of changes, as we are going to see, and they're always looking for improved labor conditions. They also face a variety of constraints. And last but not least, the incentives behind reaching out for changes and the ability to fulfill them cannot be entirely disassociated from individual and household finances. How they experience the economy is going to also have some kind of uh, you know influence into their decisions. So, what changes were these respondents looking for? Respondents were, allowed to select multiple responses when we asked them what changes they were looking for. I colored this chart in different, using different colors. The bars in yellow show the changes that required an individual to change jobs. And at the very top, we can see that respondents were mainly looking for jobs that offered better pay and better benefits. Um, Lower on the chart, a characteristic of the post-pandemic environment is that we adapted so quickly to major changes. And in the process, we realized that many jobs could be done remotely. So almost 20% of those looking for changes said that they were looking for jobs that offer remote options. 16% wanted flexibility in the workplace or, make some type of career change. The green bars show changes that people are chasing that don't necessarily require those workers to leave their jobs. For example, more than a quarter said that they were planning to ask for higher pay at their current job. And 16% wanted to advance in their jobs, wanted to get a promotion, wanted to get ready for that next step in their careers. Lastly, the light gray bar in this chart shows the share of respondents that were trying to find a second job. Slightly over a quarter of those seeking changes were also looking for a second job to supplement their current income. They were looking for added stability in terms of their financial capabilities. So how hard is it to look for improved work conditions or to look for changes? Most people who were looking for a change expressed facing some level of difficulty doing so. More than half experienced moderate to high degrees of difficulty. And well, that brings us to the next slide. What challenges were people facing as they made these changes or as they were seeking these changes? To make a move, all the right conditions need to align for individuals. Perhaps it's no surprise that insufficient pay at available jobs tops the list of challenges faced. The move needs to be worth it. Perhaps people need to take time off to look for jobs, apply, etc. Looking for a job can be actually a job in and on itself. So I think that again, it's no surprise that not having a job that pays enough to make the change worth it may be a deterrent. Next on the list are the lack of credentials to meet job requirements. This could be either because of the way the job announcement is written or because of lack of training or education on the part of the applicant. And I think that's a recognition here that there is that mismatch. 20% felt that their credentials did not match employers' requirements. The next one relates to the flexibility people are increasingly looking for. It has been said anecdotally over the last couple of years that since the pandemic, people have been rethinking how they spend their time, reassessing their work-life balance. And so, them saying, it's about 15% that said that schedules that are difficult to keep were seen as challenges among these respondents. It does kind of highlight a little bit of those anecdotal pieces that we are hearing. Lower in the challenges list, but still important. We have skills to meet job requirements, benefits, distance to work, and the challenges to gain those new skills and prepare applicants for better opportunities. There's somewhat of a theme about wanting to improve their skills and that skill mismatch across these last two slides. So last in this particular section about labor mobility, while these pieces were not necessarily measured by a particular questions, respondents share some of what was motivating them to change jobs or look for other occupational changes. Career growth opportunities, again, that's the theme I was referring to earlier. Need to feel appreciated and seen. We read that throughout some of the comments that we got. Reduce burnout and pressures from staff shortages is, companies have been having a hard time hiring individuals. Some have had to take have had to take some additional responsibilities. And lastly, need to increase household income, and that is actually a very good segue into our next section. Labor-related decisions and opportunities cannot be isolated from the economic realities of households. We asked a couple questions that aim to try to better understand how the economy could be impacting households' economic decisions. And so, this particular question, for example, allowed for multiple responses as well. As you can see, almost half of those change-seeking respondents told us they were concerned with their ability to make a rent or mortgage payment, the whole housing affordability. And a similar share said that car repair was a concern. Now, while this is not an ongoing expense, hopefully, I interpret this as a concern for destabilization, particularly for lower income individuals. Paying for a car repair could be a shock that brings with it other factors that could stabilize individual and household finances. So it in a way makes sense that that would be a big concern. 44% express stress about paying for food and energy bills. And lower on the list, but still again worth mentioning, healthcare bills, auto insurance, as it has also skyrocketed, fuel and medication expenses. Rising prices across the board have likely aggravated the situation for many. I'm pretty sure a lot of you may be familiar with it. In this chart, for example, just wanted to add that here, shows the 12-month changes in the consumer price index over the last 10 years or so. And what it tells us is that inflation has been very high over the last couple of years. It is coming down, but it does remain well above our 2% target. And families and individuals are feeling the pressure. Despite the fact that inflation is cooling, people told us they still feel that prices are increasing across the board with more intensity on groceries. If you've been to the grocery store, you're probably also familiar with that. Prepared food at restaurants. People are experiencing higher menu prices. Fuel, while that's been a little more volatile and it sometimes gives us some reprieve, it's still very high for many individuals, especially if they have to drive long distances to work. This is particularly true in rural areas. where people depend more heavily on their cars, so they've been feeling the pressure of those fuel prices. Where possible, people made substitutions to adjust their budgets. For example, buying generic medications, right? Or changing the types of groceries they buy. In the past, we have heard from people who started visiting food shelves. Haley actually has a great article out there about that particular trend. Other things that we have heard people doing, driving less, putting off buying clothing if they don't need it right away, or going to cheaper options. Um, Keeping the lights off sometimes, and sometimes even the thermostats at limit temperatures so that they could save on energy costs. And as it could be expected, as you can see throughout this chart, the more elastic those items are, the more people are able to change their consumption of them. So that's what I will leave you with on this particular chart. Um, just to wrap it up, this presentation was meant to just give you a very high overview of the main points of what we found in this survey. Despite being employed, some of these workers, as you can see, are looking for changes. Those changes are motivated by a variety of reasons. Workers face a variety of mobility challenges as they do that. The constraints are many, and some are concerned with being able to pay for basics such as utilities, healthcare, housing, and this is again no surprise because the purchasing power of individuals has been facing some additional challenges as inflation has been so high. So with that, again, I will invite you to join us in this work if you haven't done so, and if you're interested in doing so. Please scan that QR code. We would love to be in touch with you, hear from you. Lastly, I will just show this slide with my information. Please contact me directly with any questions, and give me a little follow on social media. And thank you for being here.
So Eric has some time for questions. If you have questions, please type them in the Zoom chat box. We can start with this one. There were a few questions about the occupational makeup of the survey respondents. So just to start off, what kind of jobs did the respondents to the survey have?
Yeah, so we heard from a lot of individuals in the nonprofit sector, but we also did hear from teachers, drivers, kitchen workers, hospitality workers. With the help of SEIU 26, we were able to hear from some janitorial workers and security officers. So it was, I would say, you know, a broad range of occupations. So yeah.
And then someone else was wondering a little more specifically if there was a breakdown by industry of the 17% that were pursuing changes, what industries or occupations were most popular among that subgroup of respondents.
Yeah, most were probably, I can't remember right now, but I think most of them were actually nonprofit workers and a lot of hospitality and other industries. But I would say nonprofit and hospitality were more represented on these.
Someone else was wondering, they said they were surprised that households cut back on medication expenditures, and they said that they would have thought that they were very inelastic. Do you have any insights on that?
I do not. I was actually surprised by that as well. I think what we see there more, and I'm going to go back a little bit to that couple slides. What we see, what we see in the medication line, some reductions, and on the green and yellow bars that you see here, about 60% of individuals said um, that they were reducing medication use. Again, I will bring up the caution that this is not necessarily representative of the population in the district. So we don't know to what degree this is telling us that people are actually not buying the medication that they need, or whether they're buying less or taking less than they should. It's very hard to tell with the data that we gather, to be honest. So I wouldn't dare to make any type of assumptions. What I find more interesting here is that medication is the category where people made the most substitutions. And you read this in the comments that people provided to supplement these questions. People make substitutions for cheaper options. But that's a great question.
Someone else was wondering if there was any data on how long people were looking for jobs.
We did not ask that question this time around. And we have in the past. We are trying to make the survey shorter so that people can. These are self-reported results, by the way. I should have said that at the beginning. So with that in mind, we are trying to make it easier for individuals to participate. And I honestly cannot remember the last survey that we did, but I will dare to say, just from what I can vaguely remember in the past from similar surveys, somewhere between 6 months to a year seems to be the more people that are looking for jobs have been doing that for about 6 months to a year.
Great, thanks. Someone else also was wondering why the Minnesota labor force participation rate spiked immediately following the
Yes.
pandemic. Was it noisy data, definition change, or some real effect?
Yes. Well, we have been wondering that. We get that data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I believe they also get that data from the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. We don't know whether that is a methodology issue in the data as it's being presented. We've been actually trying to get to an answer. So if anyone in the audience knows someone that might know the answer to that spike, yeah, I think it's not the first time we get that question. We unfortunately don't have the answer for
that. There was a couple other questions about the makeup of the survey responses or respondents. Did you happen to look at any differences between rural and urban responses, or did you not go to that kind of level?
But I did not go to that kind of level for the analysis of this presentation. What I can say is that because Community Action Partnership, who have been great partners for this survey, they work with a lot of low and mid-income individuals, and so they're going to what they do is they distribute the survey to their clients when they come in and ask for services, et cetera, et cetera. So most of them are going to have the same or very similar, I should say, very similar characteristics in terms of their economic composition, if you want. It's not going to change much whether it's rural or urban if we're looking at income levels and challenges that they face. It seems to be very, very similar. But again, this is a relatively small share of individuals that have provided insight. We use these mainly to provide some more insights into the data that gets published and is more publicly available. Did not get to do that comparison. That's, I guess, the short answer to that.
Great. Well, someone was just also wondering, could you repeat the number of respondents that you got for the survey?
488. 488 at the time of this analysis. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I don't see any other questions coming into the chat right now, so that will be our last question for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please join us for our next virtual event, Regional Economic Conditions, Hospitality and Tourism, on Friday, September 22nd. More information will be in our follow-up email to this event. And with that, I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you, everybody.